Tonight, we celebrate T.A.Z, a lady of many names. Tiamat in the Babylonian. Eris, Kalisti, T.A.Z.
Okay, nobody move! Nobody move! Nobody move! You don't have any idea of what I'm capable of doing with this double-headed matriarchal feminist axe that I stole from a museum in ancient Crete, brought back to be with us here tonight. Now, as of now, ladies and gentlemen, you are being entertained by a crime, a terrorist crime involving you. As of now, I have kidnapped you all and I'm holding you hostage until my demands are met. Furthermore, I hereby kidnap myself and I'm holding myself hostage until my demands are met. This crime I commit not for my own selfish gain, but because I love you more than I love you. Here is my list of demands. I demand that you undo the black magic that you practiced on yourself. I demand that you pretend to be crazy so you can get away with doing what's right. I demand that you relax and breathe deeply and fill your magic lungs with cleansing blue oxygen. And make every beautiful animal cell in your body purr with luminous gratitude. And turn yourself into a violet cloud of electric love. I demand that you stick out your tongue and cross your eyes and put on your funniest face and kick yourself in the ass. And I demand that you barge into the ecstatic state by any means necessary. I demand that you get into the trance from whatever it takes. Choose 10 from among the following ecstatic techniques: fasting, intense solitude, alcohol or drugs, prolonged silence, intentional lack of sleep, global warming in your pants, pretending to be dead for 3 days, telling nothing but lies for 24 hours, forcing yourself to laugh about nothing, concentrating intensely on a beetle in dung, looking at yourself in the mirror for 3 hours without blinking, dancing all night with your clothes on inside out, discovering information that renders your political beliefs irrelevant, witnessing an event considered impossible by your rational mind, reviewing in painstaking detail the history of your life, dreaming that you're dreaming that you're dreaming, loving your enemies in case your friends turn out to be jerks, burn your money, create your own double, call everything by its wrong name, renounce your horoscope, childbirth, travel in outer space. I hereby demand that you barge into the ecstatic state with the help of a little ecstatic love spell. I demand that you help me cast an ecstatic love spell on you tonight, starting with turning this stinking concrete hole in the wall into an ancient sacred temple, overflowing with hilarious kundalini. I demand that you turn this whole neighborhood, where rats run free and 9-year-olds carry guns, into a T.A.Z, temporary autonomous zone, true alien zodiac, ticklish atavistic psycho, trustworthy assholes in, transgress all zippers. I demand that you now follow me into the ecstatic state by any means necessary as I call on our divine friends to help us because they love us more than they love us. And as I face the east, and I call to the God of the east, O God of the east, you primordial mushroom cloud, you psychedelic mushroom cloud at the center of all our brains. Oh God of the East, make us disciplined enough to go crazy in the name of creation, not destruction. Now I call to the goddess of the South. Oh goddess of the South, you sly universal virus with no fucking opinion. Give us bigger and better and more original sins. Give us wilder, wetter, and more interesting problems. And oh God of the West, you wealthy anarchist burning heaven to the ground, brainwash us with your freedom so that we never love our own pain more than anyone else's pain. O Goddess of the North, who gives us so much love and confusion mixed together that our morality collapses, who gives us so much change that we want to puke, guide us to realize that we are all completely different from what we think we are, more exciting than we could possibly imagine. No Goddess of the North, turn this stinking concrete hole in the wall into an ancient sacred temple overflowing with hilarious kundalini. And inspire those in attendance tonight to join me in the stream that will send us into that place where the dream time and the wake time meet. God has inspired these people to stream with me on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Proscenium and sacrifice. Goodbye to the audience. The whole question of the audience has become problematic. Why are artists still meddling or mediating between people and their desires? Why are artists still meddling or mediating between people and their desires, or acting as desiring machines on behalf of others who, and for what reason, delegate their authority, their power to various stars, performers, writers, experts, or spokespersons? The most marginal art, not the avant-garde. The avant-garde has disappeared, hasn't it? The most marginal art, the most alternative art, now often consists of nothing but an ironic take on the impossibility of the artist as mediator. After Dada, everyone was supposed to become an artist. After Duchamp, after Situationism, after the art strike, which was itself nothing but irony, a parody of the social action jammed into the empty niche once occupied by the social. The artist now accomplishes nothing more than TV ads, holding up images to be admired, to be desired, to be purchased, whether with money or with pieces of one's soul. Images that are not the real goods, bites which never satisfy or cure, but simply create the thirst for more images, even images of utopia. Can we go so far as to say that the artist is more conscious than the ad exec or commodity designer? Haven't they also read McLuhan and Baudrillard? It's not that we're all postmodernists, Allah forbid, nor have we all succumbed to the crypto-fascism of pomo-morbidity. But, you see, we were trained up in all these art forms, which now seem so moribund. I frequently experience moments of nausea in bookstores at the thought of adding one more page to all that fucking print. No, it's not that we're postmodernists. It's that there is no more modern. The breaking of forms has let us down because we have found that the forms of art do not coincide with the structures of art. The structures of art involve mediation or negative alienation and commodification. Any content can be contained within these structures. Babylon can use all art forms, no matter how revolutionary, to further its simulation of life and its mechanization of control. Content means nothing. Style means nothing because the deep structure does not shift or crack. Art has been given its reservations where artists can play at being Indians. The art world is thus insulated from the rest of everyday life. Every once in a while, some redneck bigot notices these enclaves of privilege and starts a censorship scare. Jesse Helms and his ilk inject a bit of fresh blood into art, which for a moment can imagine itself an insurrectionary force. The sad irony is that Helms really believes art can change the world. The NEA liberals think that all art should be permitted because, after all, it's only art. Helms and his Klansmen are the last Americans outside their art reservations who still believe that art is powerful. Most people find art boring, but Helms finds it exciting. I wish Helms were right, but I fear he isn't. If he were, he would be our greatest enemy. As it is, he seems a rather sad clown. I believed art could spark off the revolt Helms seems to fear. I wish art had the power he hallucinates, but in my gloomiest moments, ... Meanwhile, however, I don't intend to give up the art enclaves any more than Native Americans want to give up their reservations. These little quasi-bohemias may be pathetic, but they're the last vestiges of our autonomy, a room of one's own. After all, we need peace and quiet in which to think about the strategy for the next step, the dismantlement of the art machine, spanner in the substructure, sabot in the cloning device, resistance in the virtual reality arcades. I'm a bad prophet because I bet on anomalous events, pataphysical roulette. Ordinary punters may win more often, but only at cheesy odds. I may never win, but if I do, what a payoff. Billions and billions and billions to one. The problem then is the audience. We're ready, or so we like to think, to break down the final proscenium, erase the last borders between art and life. But the audience is still there, suggesting slyly that even entertainment, after all, is holy too. Tell us a story, the sacred request. It's in our blood, O College of Bards. But the bard's curse is supposed to be able to blight crops and bowl over crooked politicians. The bard is not just another image monger. The bard, the shaman poet, wields power. When the bard pays attention, even wild animals come round to snuff at the psychic overflow. In Iran and the Soviet Union in the old days, they used to jail poets, even execute them for poems. Now that was censorship. Most of these Americans are not moaning about banned books or burned paintings, much less torture. They're complaining because the state won't support their particular little enclave anymore. Well, it's true. I like it here on the reservation. It's cozier than the outside. And I believe in taking the state for what I can get. But to complain about censorship, that's too much loss of face. A touch of Bushido, please. A sense of proportion. To be blunt, let's suppose that I live on a small stipend which allows me the luxury of going daily to the library, absorbing poetic facts, and assembling them into various forms of entertainment. Other people have to work for a living, and they, let's assume, need someone to provide them with precisely such entertainment. theory as prose poetry or whatever. Fine. Occasionally I even make a bit of money at it. Fine. But that's not my true desire. It's nice, but it's not satisfaction. It's not evil, but it's not utopia. Footnote. The disappearance of art does not mean the literal vanishment of the artist, nor of those who appreciate the artist's creations. Of course, the specialist in creative manifestations will exist in every society, including the most primitive or primordial known to ethno-history. The hunter-gatherer, shaman, bard is not, however, a professional. If the creative specialist in the tribe spends his or her time hunting or gathering a little bit less than the others of the tribe, this is due to what Marcel Mauss called the economy of the gift, not the economy of the commodity. In certain traditional societies, everyone is an artist with her or his own specialty. And this is possible because the economy of such societies has not yet conceived of work as alienation. All livelihoods are arts, from midwifery to war. Nothing is mere labor. I insist that this is no mere romantic distortion of the economy of the gift, nor am I advocating a return to the Stone Age. As I said, I want to bomb myself back to the Stone Age. As the economy of the commodity has ended by nauseating us, however, I believe it is important to emphasize the existence, past, present, or future, of other possibilities. Meanwhile, as long as the work-consume dichotomy defines life and creation for so many of us, the artist will, of course, not abandon the audience to withdraw into some private dream of a golden age. My point is exactly the opposite. The audience has begun to abandon the artist, and in this disappearance I see some reason for cheer. To return to the text. Now, a utopian poetics has been proposed. In this game, we construct utopian minimums and use them to measure our true desires. For us, therefore, poetics comes inescapably to concern itself with changing the world and changing it closer to our heart's desire, to quote Marx and Omer Khayyam. The image, though powerful, is no more than a talisman meant to invoke an occurrence in the real world. Pardon this loose terminology, let's say rather in everyday life. So, we want to accomplish more than just the ritual of holding up some icon of desire and mumbling a few prayers at it. We want effective prayers. Put that way, it sounds rather absurd. Let's say rather that we want to refuse to allow our desire to be recuperated once again into the post-spectacular economy of virtual reality. The reality in which we can have whatever we wish for, except without smell, without taste, and without touch. Let's try to imagine ourselves proclaiming either democratic shamanism or nothing. Are we really prepared to face that nothing? Nietzsche founded his project on it. Are we too chicken even to discuss it? Give me the suppression and realization of art, or give me... Well, are we ready to face martyrdom for a goal even vaguer than freedom of speech? For art? Again, a reductio ad absurdum. Far be it from me to propose anything so 19th century. Perhaps it would make more sense to suggest that we live for art, that we begin at last to live as if our art were meant for something, some action. As for the nothing, we'll face it when we have to. Meanwhile, dolce far niente, sweet do nothing, rather than nihilism. The harvest still ripens, the table is still laid. Let's say that art would be for once and at last to enjoy it, the feast, the excessive generosity of being. Not the image, but the pleasure. Sweet do nothing, the ludic principle, jouissance, say yes to the world, and so on. This, I fear, would make the audience impossible. No one consumes the play I am hypothesizing, either as image or as commodity. Either we all play, or else we're back to our starting point again, audience and artist divided by the proscenium, the medium, the sacrifice. I have a footnote here. The artist sacrifices talent for money. The audience sacrifices money for talent. But which is priest? Which is deity? Who cuts whom? One way to visualize the work of art without an audience would be as a secret society, or as the Chinese call them, a tong. Tact and tactics, however, demand that no more be printed, or perhaps spoken publicly, about the tong than the bare hint of its possible existence. The tong demands mystery now, at once, immediately, and without mediation. Frankly, I think this is happening and will happen, whether anyone theorizes about it or not. New structures are emerging which depend on reciprocity rather than production and consumption. Synergetic, non-hierarchical experiments in mutuality and mutability. Evanescent tongues, temporary autonomous zones, encrypted webworks, pirate utopias. The problem of work is being worked on. The work-consume dichotomy, or work-consume-die, is being undermined and sabotaged. This is happening at the level of everyday life, not in the media, not in the spectacle, not in the economy of control, not in the realm of theory. We might go so far as to anticipate and to claim, perhaps prematurely, that the media are void. The sacrifice is empty. The proscenium has evaporated. All we need to do is exorcise the spooks and say goodbye to the audience. This is called the criminal bee, B-E-E, like a quilting bee. Nietzsche says somewhere that the true free spirit will not wish to see the laws of the herd abolished, lest there exist nothing to struggle against and overcome. Little danger of such an abolishment at this point, one might suppose. Since Nietzsche's time, law has perhaps mutated from a complex but dimensional tool of the oppressor class to the subtle, fractal, all-pervasive self-image of the spectacle. Law simulates the dictatorship of the commodity, forever promising and forever withdrawing the utopia of justice. Our founding myths here in America, which take the form of texts, such as a Declaration of Independence or a Bill of Rights, etc., prove so infinitely flexible as to become, like all myths, their opposites. The law no longer seems like some dialectical edge, as it was for Nietzsche, but rather a viral ooze infecting the very fabric of language and thought. One can no longer distinguish between cops and cop culture, the media-induced hallucination of a society defined by its lawyers and police. 10 minutes in a video store should convince any impartial observer that we live in a police state of consciousness, far more pervasive than the Nazis, those crude early pioneers of amphetamine, television, and ballistics. What, for example, would a UFO alien visitor think of a planet whose favorite icon appeared to consist of an angry law enforcement official pointing a gun at the observer? Some few subjects may free their minds for brief moments from the flickering omnipresence of this one true axiomatic image of our moment in time, as Nixon used to call the present. No doubt they will at once begin to wonder about the possibility of overcoming the law, both as a social code which labels our desires forbidden, and as an ectoplasmic superego, or cop of the inner landscape, suffocating us with the fear of our own passions. The first step in any real utopia is to look in the mirror and demand to know my true desires, an action which already presupposes at least the temporary overcoming of conditioned anxiety, of the fear that a demon may appear in the glass, or a demonic cop. Now, what do I see? The first image to float to the surface of the scry stone, the magic mirror, is the criminal. My desires are illegal. My manias are forbidden in civilization. The moral code embedded within the legal code defines my appetites as injuring. Charles Fourier and Nietzsche both defined the criminal as a natural insurrectionary spirit in revolt against the stifling repression of the social consensus. The criminal's tragedy, however, lies in being merely the opposite of the cop, a mirror image, and therefore equally an image, a trap, a definition imposed within the language of control. And in any case, the deeper I look into the glass, the less I see of any desires which I myself might label wrong, according to my own personal code of ethics. Wrong, for me, means counterproductive and ultimately self-immiserating. I don't want to realize my desires at the expense of other people's misery, not because such action would be immoral, but because it would be psychically self-defeating. Misery breeds misery. Those who are caught in the trap of trying to realize desires by hurting others are all, in my experience, themselves miserable and psychically poor. Crime, in this sense of the word, pays, but it doesn't pay enough. I reject it for purely selfish reasons. To realize my desires, I must overcome or even break the law, but I do not need to do wrong according to my own light, nor will I accept the consensus label of criminal. This explains why fascism is not an answer. Fascism is a desiring machine, but only for an amoral elite who achieve their goals through the creation and destruction of enemies and victims, as in the Marquis de Sade. Fourier, however, Charles Fourier, asserts that desire itself remains impossible unless all desires are possible, that passion involves the other, and therefore defines the only possible or real society. This realization draws the boundary between fascism and anarchism. Gazing yet deeper into the mirror, in fact, I begin to see that I'm not alone there, that the self implies others, that we are co-implicated in each other's desires. And here we come to a stage higher, in Nietzsche's view, than mere criminality. The society of free spirits, or as Max Stirner called it, the union of self-owning ones. A form of organization exists which evades the murderous dialectic of institutions, the paradoxical counterproductivity of institutions, as Ivan Illich calls it. This different kind of group might be identified with Fourier's passional series, the psychically linked number of humans needed to express and realize a shared or common passional goal. Such harmonial associations are prevented from coming into being, Fourier insisted, by civilization itself, which is founded on mass immiseration. He believed that utopia would first have to be established in order for true series to form spontaneously out of the various passions for sensual and sexual fulfillment, for attractive labor, and for the total physical and psychic realization of the individual in society. In other words, Fourier made an absolute category of society, just as Nietzsche and Stirner made an absolute category of the individual. Our task is not to follow either of these ideas, but to deconstruct, synthesize, and reconstruct. Out of this process, we hope to see arise not merely another ideology or another no-place place, utopos, which is what utopia means, however brilliant or imaginally stimulating, but rather a praxis, a mode of action for realizing the series and manifesting its passion here and now, or so close to here and now we can taste it. Elsewhere, I have considered a number of possible forms for such groups, including the loosest, most temporary and ad hoc organizational agglomerations. Here, however, I want to consider only one aspect of such groupings, that is, their illegality. I will argue that illegality means more than mere law-breaking. Illegality as a positive attribute of the temporary autonomous zone implies that the very structure or deepest motivation of the T.A.Z. group contravenes or necessitates the overcoming of consensus values, and that this is true even when no statute or regulation has been broken. But in order to avoid as much metaphysics as possible here, we can discuss some actual existing groups or situations which approximate the temporary autonomous zone concept to some degree. And by criticizing their shortcomings, perhaps we can arrive at a clearer view of possibilities for the immediate future. One. How am I doing? You ready for more of this? You want me to finish? All right. One, the web of work. Computer hacking has so far turned up nothing that has enhanced my life. Nor can I detect much enhancement in the lives of the hackers themselves. The goal of liberating all information is noble but ludicrously unobtainable. This should by now be obvious to all who watched while the state smashed to a pulp a few hapless liberators of a few bits of useless information. The potential for liberation inherent in the BBS as a tool for social projects has also not yet been realized. The BBS meganet involves untold thousands of email enthusiasts who have so far not sent or received one real good. Someone please tell me I'm wrong. Okay, we can talk about that afterwards. No, I'd like to hear. I really believe, I really want to be told I'm wrong. But 99% idle chatter, 1% maybe interesting information. But no chicken stew, no orgies, and no enlightenment. All right? Orgies where? In the computer network? All right. Give me a break. Now at last, the hackers have begun to experiment with cryptology. The cypherpunks boast that soon secure networks will be available to email users. One might issue the hackers a challenge here. Deliver to me one thing which is illegal and which I want and which I could not have obtained so easily or at all without a computer network. I'd even accept a nice bit of high-resolution pornography. Prove that computers can supply it, or at least expedite, something more than publishing programs or creepy-sounding synthetic music. I demand secrets, and I'm getting bored with waiting, thanks to a lifetime spent reading science fiction. 2. Another organizational possibility, the gathering. Considered as a temporary autonomous zone, the gathering can be called and held without any computer assistance, which is indeed fortunate, because the gathering is a vital necessity now, today, and it is already evolving spontaneously out of this need. A number of kinds of gatherings nowadays aspire to manifest as temporary autonomous zones. The neo-pagan festivals, the rainbow camps, collaborative art events, open conspiracies such as Queer Nation or WAC, raves, anarchist collectives, hypercultural intentional communities, secret societies meeting for risky or illegal or insurrectionary goals, etc., drug dealers. These groups or gatherings constitute the only viable immediate means of realizing passional series in real-time everyday life, in opposition to the forces of dissipation, alienation, and suffocation by which the consensus vitiates and dissolves all human aspiration to solidarity and festal values. Any critique leveled at these existing groups or gatherings, therefore, is meant as constructive in every sense of the word. The problems lie in two areas, philosophical and organizational. Some groups fail to realize the full implications of their reaction against the spectacle, which remains instinctual and hence philosophically unsound. For example, the 1960s delusion that we can use the media for our own ends still persists, so that many groups are ruined by the very publicity they thought they needed in order to attain their goals. Once such a group allows itself to become recuperated as part of the spectacle of countercultural dissent, the Punch and Judy show of the media state, it will be compromised or even doomed. But an understanding of the dialectics of media should enable the group to devise a strategy of organization and praxis based on evasive or nomadic models of resistance rather than on the old New Left shibboleths of confrontation and seizing the media. On the level of tactics, of organizational detail and specific projects, this philosophical preparedness should result in more effective means for the expression, realization, manifestation of desire on the level of everyday life. Publicity is a bad tactic, while tact and virtual clandestinity are good tactics. By virtual clandestinity, I mean not total secrecy, but rather the skillful avoidance of counterproductive publicity and recuperation. These are good tactics for the groups we are discussing here because, one must repeat, these groups need to engage in illegality, even to approximate their intended purpose. The state deals with certain illegalities not in any systematic way, but in spectacular spasms of violent repression, similar to public executions in 17th century London, meant to terrorize and paralyze any potential rebels against the norms of order. The computer hackers are treated this way, as are the sex and drug dissidents, black nationalists, and other proponents of forbidden passions. In this climate of simulated justice, i.e. terror, it makes no sense whatsoever to seek publicity for a group's illegal or immoral activities. Converts attracted via the media are usually summer soldiers and neurotics. And if the wrong politician happens to catch your broadcast, you may end up as the next bad example, crushed beneath the boot of history for all to see, live on 5. It's your world. Get this close, as the ads for PBS so breathlessly express it. Oh yes, let Geraldo rattle your cage. That's, maybe you haven't heard that slogan out here yet. To give an example of some organizations, NAMBLA and Normal have both had their membership lists seized by police, the price of 60s media idealism. NAMBLA and Normal have achieved absolutely nothing of their reformist goals and may even have done damage to their own causes through their misunderstanding of the media. This is not the 1960s, when the CIA could still lose control of LSD to a bunch of hippie publicists, or television inadvertently contribute to anti-war sentiment by neglecting to censor the body bag count. We've had decades of Republican intelligence, late capitalist control conspiracy, power mongering since then. Communism is dead, and now you're the enemy. Wake up. Wise up. Most of the world has sunk deep into media trance. They can't wake up and smell the coffee because the coffee has no smell. It's become pure image. Television is the real world, the real thing now. And if you don't believe it, you are outside reality. This is far worse than being a criminal. At least the criminal has some relationship with the consensus. One must pity the radicals whose plan of battle always includes open boasting about their intransigent opposition to all establishment values, alerting the enemy as if only 5 seconds on the evening news or the lifestyle report could possibly validate their revolutionary ideas and their pathetic personalities. Once and for all, the insurrection is not a commodity. My desires are not commodities, and the media cannot reproduce them, much less satisfy them. One doesn't need to be a media ecologist recommending a media fast to see that all the big media must be understood, criticized, and overcome, or at least evaded, if we're to get anywhere with our project. 3, the insurrection. I'd like to answer those critics who have accused the temporary autonomous zone of being an evasion or a postponement or a substitute for the insurrection or even for the revolution. In part, these criticisms come from some Latin American comrades who seem to feel uneasy about the adventurous aspect of the T.A.Z., and from North Americans who called it an anarchist Club Med. Tad Kepley said that. Both critiques are important. The T.A.Z. is not an idea or an ideology, but something that is happening. As such, it needs good criticism. On the contrary, I've tried to emphasize over and over again that the temporary autonomous zone is another way of building the kernel of the new society within the shell of the old, as the Wobblies used to say. Yep. And that the temporary autonomous zone should serve as the matrix for the emergence of a Sorelian myth of uprising. Georges Sorel, highly recommended. However, it must also be repeated that the USA, at any rate, can scarcely be described in 1993 as a pre-revolutionary society. The election of a corrupt and venal pseudo-liberal regime which will smooth over a few rough spots in the spectacle while the Republicans reorganize to continue building the New World Order in 1996, makes the possibility of an American uprising even less likely. Are we then to postpone all liberatory action until things get worse again? This would scarcely be logical or creditable. Those of us who feel so irrationally unhappy with the wonderful world of commodities and neo-Puritan reaction cannot justly be denied the chance of local and transient experiments of utopian realization, now, or as soon as possible, in our lifetimes, in our lives. And this struggle is not without relevance for those people elsewhere in the world whom we may consider our natural allies, such as indigenous and tribal groups or revolutionary movements. In this sense, the temporary autonomous zone is like a pre-echo of the insurrection, a foretaste of its great liberatory energies, and can even be seen as a necessary step toward the revolution which will realize utopia. Thus, it should be emphasized that the temporary autonomous zone has not only a festal, ludic, or festaludic, celebratory or material bodily principle in view, but also, like yang to yin, an inevitable measure of insurrectionary risk and intention to remake the world. The temporary autonomous zone cannot be realized solely as a hedonic exercise, which would lead to just charges of Club Med-ism, or even crypto-fascism. The temporary autonomous zone goes beyond the merely hedonic because it wants to expand and multiply till it infects or even becomes the social. And therefore, even though the temporary autonomous zone may be secret and closed and intensely pleasurable for its members, it must also be seen as a struggle which opens itself potentially to all kindred spirits and fellow warriors. To repeat the sentence that I just footnoted, the temporary autonomous zone cannot be realized solely as a hedonic exercise any more than the revolution can be realized without dancing, as Emma Goldman put it. Most of the temporary autonomous zone-like groups and gatherings known to me fail to measure up in one or the other of these areas. The political groups have still not mastered the pleasure principle, while the lifestyle groups have still not mastered the politics. Political praxis of some sort, of course, adds to the risk involved in the temporary autonomous zone, and therefore increases the need for tact. But it also increases the pleasure. The group jouissance, the group coming within the temporary autonomous zone. This pleasure results from the very sense of overcoming, first mentioned by Nietzsche when he spoke of the free spirit's joy at evading the law of the herd. And if this sounds elitist, remember that from the anarchist point of view, the herd consists precisely and only of those who agree to be herded. After the revolution, no doubt, free spirits would find some other source for the pleasure of overcoming. However, until then, the law still exists as an edge on which to sharpen our lives. But the revolution, in a certain sense, can be said not to exist, since it has not happened within the history it wishes to claim as its field of activity. As for the law, it exists only as spectacle and as a pattern of spasms of terror. But the temporary autonomous zone is rooted, however evanescently, within the life we live, within the material and the imaginal world in which we have our genuine being, however fragmentary and even tragic, and within the celebratory mode of pleasure enhanced by doubling and redoubling which is the only excuse for society we know. Rather than crime, it might make more sense, or better poetry, to speak of sorcery, which has all the connotations of secrecy and power we desire for the emerging temporary autonomous zone, an air of menace, of invisibility, and of the realization of desires. As for illegality, well, a quilting bee is not illegal, yet it can be a perfect temporary autonomous zone. Sooner or later, however, even the quilting bee runs the danger of becoming the object of tourism. It will become a banal imitation of itself, a pitiful spectacle, unless it can create, at least for a moment, an economy of life capable of persisting, even if only briefly, outside the prison of work, consume, die. And that economy, by its very nature, threatens the spook world of control. Eventually, the bee will be illegal, since it is already considered insane. And so the immediatist quilting bee should begin now to act as if it were already illegal, and to embrace a philosophy of illegalism. Today quilts, tomorrow perhaps the uprising. Our kind of bee or tongue might be devoted to sex info exchange, tax evasion, hashish farming, or even to orgies, credit scams, or gun running. It will still have the structure of the immediatist quilting bee. And so the immediatist bee should already anticipate a possible need to run guns or stage orgies. It should be prepared to act within the cracks of the monolith of simulation like a true gang of Johnsons, like a swamp full of calicacs, like conspirators whose purpose is really to breathe together, like criminals for the human race, like pirate utopians for peace, like guerrillas of harmony. Thank you.
Okay, well, Joe didn't give me much of an introduction. I'm the author of Quantum Reality, the definitive book on modern physics. And no, that's not a joke, this is true. And one of the things, Hakim, about debating the law, remember, the laws of physics don't need cops. We're so confident in the laws of physics that we don't even bother to enforce them. People will just, try and violate the law of gravity, for instance. So the idea with these kind of laws is you really have to be evasive. You can't meet them head on, the laws of physics. One of the things about science is that you've been getting the news lately that we're coming close to discovering everything, to finishing up the grand unified field. With Stephen Hawking, this guy in the wheelchair, saying we have just about got it, I'm going to be out of a job in another year because they're going to unify all the forces. So science, in a sense, is coming to an end, conventional physics, in a sense. But what I think, as the metaphor I like to use, is two things. One, Isaac Newton said, I don't know how others see me, but I see myself as a child on the seashore, picking up one shell after another, while all around me the ocean of ignorance lies before me. And I like that ocean of ignorance. The idea is that the more our knowledge expands, and it certainly has expanded in physics, the bigger the island of knowledge gets, the bigger the perimeter of ignorance. And that's what's interesting about being a scientist, is diving into this sea of ignorance. It's not so much the fun of knowing things, but immersing oneself in ignorance. So if physics is coming to an end, what we've got to do is look out on the edges of this science and find out where we're most ignorant and dive in on that. And so one of the things I would like to preach in line with Hakim Bey's participatory gesture is that we should open up science to participation. Everyone should be let in the doors of the laboratory. And the way to do that is to find the areas of greatest ignorance in yourself and dive in. Everyone, I'm not stopping you from doing that. There's no, and in this way, one evades the physical laws, in a sense, by finding one's own areas of research. So since the physics is beginning to run down, all the laws of physics are being discovered, we have to look next door to see what areas of ignorance are still left. Since I'm a specialist in quantum physics, I'm pleased that quantum mechanics has opened up in addition to new areas of knowledge, new areas of ignorance. Quantum mechanics describes the world when it's not observed as potentia, a type of non-existence that's hard to describe. Heisenberg said that in this new quantum theory, the world has dissolved, the objective world of space and time has dissolved, not into some vague, fuzzy, half-understood thing, but into the clarity of a new mathematics. So what Heisenberg was saying is that we are trapped in a very clear type of ambiguity, and a confusion, and a type of ignorance that was unheard of 100 years ago. It's a discovery of a new kind of ignorance. So what I've been doing is trying to explore my particular area of ignorance. I looked at what am I most ignorant of as a scientist, and what I'm most ignorant of, it seems to be, is sexuality and the other. So I'm diving in, trying to explore that area, the area of the other, using the methods of quantum physics. Hey, well, you use whatever tool you have at hand, see? So this is a kind of call to the new. The transmissions from this new area of ignorance are coming in the form of, I guess it's poetry. It's a kind of verse. New science is science without borders. Every man and every woman at the heart of the mystery. Every citizen gets a piece of plutonium. Every citizen gets a hit of LSD. Every citizen gets a big piece of prima materia. And every citizen gets a chunk of the Philosopher's Stone. Open your hearts, my lovely colleagues. Nothing essential is hidden from you. Amateurs again, all of us, going over old ground with new purpose. Avert your eyes, it awaits your touch. Do what thou wilt. Every man and every woman is a star. So there's a call to the new science to participate in this ocean of ignorance that we're surrounded by. And I see you've got those health balls. That's very nice. Healthy. I'd like to start this out with a blessing. I live in Santa Cruz, and Santa Cruz is a bastion of the New Age. So to make a gesture towards the New Age and towards this as a religious gathering, I'd like to read a poem called Bless Your Chakras. Anyone knows about the chakras? They're centers, in your body where energy is supposed to go channel in and out, just flow. It's an area of ignorance that closed the physicists, of course. Bless your chakras. Bless your asshole. Bless your cunt cock. Bless your solar plexus. Bless your mind. Bless your mouth. Bless your sacred nexus. And bless the green wheel, your gorgeous part. Bless the Anahata gate. Bless your sweetheart. And then there's anyone exploring this idea, this notion of sexuality, has to finally come to grips with the other. You don't just stand up here and masturbate, but you have to actually come to grips with this other person. And I saw in the library the other day, there was this ad for soulmate. Looking for your ideal mate, having difficulties finding the right person? You are invited to attend a soulmate workshop. And so-and-so, and so-and-so. Soulmate is dedicated to helping people find their ideal mates. Techniques are taught, by whom? And guidance is provided, all in the passive voice, for people in search of meaningful, positive relationships. It works. And then there's a phone number here which I won't give because I don't want to. I have my own trip. So soulmate, Plato says we're each part of one broken being. that yearns to be reunited. But take it from me, buddy, merging with the mysterious other is no picnic. She's neat and you're messy, wants sex when you don't. She's plain and you're dressy, hangs out where you won't. You don't really want a soulmate. She's all and everything you're not. You don't really need a soulmate. How about a tetanus shot instead? I have to admit that I've been married for a long time, so I've been doing some research in this area. So this is a distillation of taking into the area of eroticism the idea of control, of working magic on the world. This is called The Way It Works, and this is addressed to the other. Oh, mother, wife, lover, chum, I pressed a 900-gas refrigerator magnet against my balls while thinking of you. I blindfolded myself and sniffed your folded underclothing. I learned French cooking, Tai Chi Chuan, and celestial navigation just to impress you. I awoke last night and kissed my mirror, dreaming I was kissing you. Oh, mother, wife, lover, chum, if I have not been perseverant in your service, it was because my enemy had distracted me. Oh, mother, wife, lover, chum, I think of you always. Here's a short one, and then we'll get into the blasphemy parts. You know, as part of the T.A.Z, we're inclined to be blasphemous. This one's called Two of a Kind. It's a short one, inspired by Two of a Kind. Spread naked, open wide, odor of brine and vinegar, utterly shameless. The ocean. Gives me a hard-on today. Reminds me of you. Someone told me that there was some religious cult that believed that they were descended from the union of Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ, and that still exists. There's these relatives of Jesus, Jesus' great-great-great-great-grandson. What is that? Sons of Zion? Anyway. So I was meditating on this, on Jesus and Magdalena, and I know a sex worker in Santa Cruz who's this is part of my research into ignorance, whose trade name is Magdalena. So her name is Theodora, and this is for Theodora, a poem called Magdalena. What Christian would not somersault with glee to travel back to ancient Galilee, to walk barefoot on Israel's holy ground and videotape the Sermon on the Mount? Then envy me, for I lived in his time. I knew the man. We shared a glass of wine, and later on, this not unpleasing bod was wrapped around the very limb of God. What Christian would not sell his wife and farm to listen to his voice or touch his arm? I walked and touched and hearkened to his word and felt his first and second coming and his third. I held him, heard him sobbing in his sleep. He dreamt of nails punching through his feet. To me alone he spoke his secret name, and which of you could ever say the same? That's for Theodore. Here's Magdalena too. This is another take on the same prostitute. Theme, yes. Magdalena for Theodora. After the business, we uncorked the wine and talked. Then he used his lips on me like nobody before or since. He was shy and afraid, but this man knew exactly how a woman is put together. After I came, he caressed my hair as I mouthed his balls, as I took the root between my lips. I explored him orally till the candles died. Then sometime in the dark, he held my head and moaned, and I swallowed his seed. The seed of Solomon and David, the seed of Abraham and Melchizedek. I was 19 then, as young as my granddaughter, Sophia. But I still remember how it tasted. Bitter, like sea salts and myrrh. Just another blowjob? I think not. That man was divine. Okay, I'll do this UFO poem, and here's a virtual reality one. Since we talked about simulation of desire, let's get into virtual reality. Okay, this is virtual. This is sort of. I'm sure Autodesk will pop this next year when they bring out the next interface. But this is a bit of virtual reality. Let's pretend to be perfect. Let's pretend to be bad. Let's pretend to be low life. Let's pretend to be mad. Let's rip off our clothing and pretend to be holy. Let's dress up like cops and go out patrolling. Let's pretend to be starving. Let's pretend to be fed. Let's pretend to be single. Let's pretend we are wed. Let's pretend to be prostitutes, porn stars, medieval Russian saints. Let's pretend to be scientists, housewives, people with horrible complaints. Let's pretend we're telepathic and read each other's minds. Let's pretend we're individuals and live like porcupines. Let's pretend we're artists, like Anne Rice or Jimmy Joyce. Let's pretend to be what you want. We'll live in the daydream of your choice. Oh, like, pretend you're someone special, and say I am special too. Prima donnas in a daydream, or prima donnas in a drama or a magic fairy tale for two, with supporting cast of thousands playing enemies and friends who pretend to love and hate us in ways we don't intend. Let's pretend we're evil devils with stinky old cracks. Oh, let's pretend we're good angels with wings on our backs. Let's pretend we are gods that run this whole show, and whatever we please is the way it will go. Let's play we are separate. Let's play we are one. Let's play we are dying, pretending it's fun. Let's pretend we are suffering. Let's pretend we are suffering from a wound that won't heal. Let's forget we're pretending. Let's pretend it's all real.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as a physicist, I'm taught to gather data objectively and to evaluate and to publish it. That science is not science until it's published. So Freud's old question, what does women want? It's still not been answered. But I'm trying to answer, since I'm a man, what do men want? What do I want? What do men want? My wife is an interesting informant. I asked her about these questions, and she's always very informative to me. I asked her once, Betsy, what does women want? She says, what you got? I got to tell you, of course, you know that Santa Cruz is a bastion of feminism. So encountering the other in Santa Cruz is a bit bizarre. I asked my wife, Betsy, Betsy, she's doing research for this poem on what do men want. Betsy, what do you think men want? Her answer was really quick, and she said, who cares? Well, some of us scientists do. So here are the results of my finale. This is the results of my research. This was published in Monday 2000 and reprinted a number of places. Apparently a lot of people don't know what men want. So this bit of information is probably new to you. What do men want? It's subtitled, Does she do Vulcan mind meld on the first date? Okay. What do men want? I want your bra size, baby. Fax number, email address, modem com code, ID, phone machine access. Give me your thumbprint, password, blood type, and credit check. Give me your antibody spectrum. Give me your immune responses specs. Let's break bread together, baby. Exchange cryptographic primes. Let's link our parallel ports and let's go online in real time. Velcroed at the chakras. Let's circulate our key. Let's indulge in covalent bondage. Let's communicate at sea. I want to swim in your gene pool, Mama. Snort up your pheromones close range. I want to tune into your neurotransmitters and introduce you to Dr. Strange. I mean, this is what I want. You might not want this. I mean, look into your own ignorance. One of my gurus, besides Hakim Bey is my sheikh in the Moorish Orthodox Church. One of my gurus, yes, I rever him. I kiss the very dust he walks on, sort of, metaphorically, of course. But one of my gurus is Rajneesh, and Rajneesh is a great guide to research into sexuality, and one of the quantum tantra mottos comes from quantum tantra is the application of quantum physics to exploration in this area of ignorance. Quantum tantra maxims comes from Rajneesh. Rajneesh says, begin at the beginning and stay there. I want to tune into your neurotransmitters, introduce you to Dr. Strange. I want to surf your quantum potentia, mess with your thermostat. Want to tour your molecular orbits. Want to feed your Schrödinger cat. Good. Let's surgically merge our organs, our kidneys, our lungs, and our hearts. Let's read physics journals together and laugh at the dirty parts. Let's Bell connect our bodies with some quantum adhesive glue. Let's do new stuff to each other that Newton never knew. I want to feel your viscosity, honey. Melt my reological mind. I want to let your female force field vortex deform my male space-time. Oh, let's dance at warp speed, dearie. Go back before BC. We'll dress in period costume and make love to a family tree. Thank you.
I just realized today that Hillary Rodham, if you say it 5 times, it sounds like a train going away. Hillary Rodham, Hillary Rodham, Hillary Rodham, Hillary Rodham, Hillary Rodham. You hear it fading in the distance. Whereas after she got married, she started to sound like a train approaching. Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton. And I find a great deal of relief in that, because one of my current Buddhist exercises is tuning in Rush Limbaugh for a few minutes every morning. And this is a spiritual centering exercise. The gimmick is to see how long I can listen without giving way to fantasies of blowing up the studio where he's doing this. And you know, when you've reached pure Buddhist detachment, you can listen to this for, up to 3 or 4 minutes before you feel the bile rising and the blood pressure going up, and you think, oh my God, my doctor would say this is bad for me when you get to be my age. You know, when you get to be my age, you go from one room to another and you can't remember why. You stand there and you're thinking, is this senility or sensimilla? It depends on what you were doing that day. But I'm here seriously to represent the Committee for Surrealist Investigation of Claims of the Normal, which developed out of the College of Pataphysique in Paris in the old days, and was based on the work of Professor Timothy F.X. Finnegan, who was a graduate of the College of Pataphysique, who returned to Dublin to teach at Trinity College there. And Professor Finnegan demonstrated very clearly that nobody has ever encountered a normal human being. You can look far and wide, you can go out like Diogenes with a lantern, and you'll never find a normal human being. I mean, Jesse Helms, who has been mentioned a few times, thinks he's defending normalcy, but he's totally abnormal, as everybody else is. The normal is that which does not quite exist. It's a mathematical fiction invented by the English to try to get everybody to behave like them. Wait a minute, I've been getting advice from so many quarters, I don't know what. I feel like Michelle Pfeiffer in The Fabulous Baker Boys when she gets up and starts to sing and the mic isn't on. And the first thing that comes over the mic is, fucking thing doesn't work. And, turn it down. Put it down. No, hello, how are we doing now?
Real good. Turn it on. It's on.
How are you doing? Can you hear me at all? Okay. Well, Michelle Pfeiffer, fucking thing is, where was I? Oh yeah, Finnegan, Finnegan's work. And nobody has ever experienced an average day. You try to go back through your life and pick out an average day, you've never had one. There's never been a normal human being living an average day. These things are total fictions. And then the British invented time, which is a sinister device to make people work more than is good for a human being or natural. Now, as De Selby says in his comments on his commentary on Finnegan, Finnegan was probably the most Irish philosopher who ever lived. Because the Irish as a whole culture are in rebellion against time. In Cork, there are 4 clocks on the tower of the town hall, facing the 4 quarters and invoking the 4 great spirits that all shamanic traditions are based on, and which are very deep in Ireland with the 4 provinces and all. And each of these clocks has a different time on it whenever you check them by walking around. People in Cork call them the 4 liars. Going through Dublin, you can very easily get 17 different times within about 5 minutes, and these 17 times are separated not just by minutes, but sometimes by hours, especially when they have daylight savings time, which half of the citizens refuse to observe, so the clocks are always an hour apart in different parts of Dublin. The Celtic genius for invention, for entering the most poetic realms of imagination, which my wife calls the Irish genius for denial. My wife and I lived in Ireland for 6 years, and we came to opposite conclusions. She decided it was one huge dysfunctional family, and I decided it was the only place on earth where the puka could still survive. And this is to a great deal due to the work of Professor Finnegan, who, as I say, is quintessentially Irish. You look at who are the really great Irish thinkers. Well, Jonathan Swift, who proved that just because a man asserts that he's still alive, you don't have to accept that. You can still argue the matter. This came up in Swift's debate with Partridge. Partridge was the leading astrologer in Dublin, and Swift put out an astrological almanac under the name Isaac Beckersniff, and in it he predicted Partridge's death, along with a lot of other interesting events, like a member of a royal family of Europe will fall off a horse, which was absolutely guaranteed to happen at least once during the year. Yeah, you know, and there will be plagues and, you know, the usual things, and a lot of weird things, like frogs will fall out of the sky on this day. And Partridge was highly indignant at having competition from this upstart Beckersniff, and even more, finding his own death predicted. So he put out a pamphlet exposing Beckersniff's total ignorance of the science of astrology, his pretentiousness, the fact that he was a charlatan, and Partridge concluded that the day of his death, the day after his alleged death, he would bring forth another pamphlet showing the extent of Beckersniff's errors. Well, the day after his alleged death, Partridge published his pamphlet. I'm still here. Beckersniff is refuted. And Swift, like a good Dubliner, sat down and wrote a point-by-point refutation, showing that just because Partridge insists he's alive, we don't have to believe him. If we're going to follow pure logic, we can define terms in such a way we prove he's dead. From every proof that he's alive, we can turn it into a proof he's dead. And this has always been the Irish attitude towards logic. Logic is another device the British invented to make us all act like Englishmen, which nobody would want to do but a mad dog. You know, mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. I know everybody else with any sense goes to the pub and has a few pints. And the other, Swift's very close friend at Trinity College, George Berkeley, later became a bishop. And he is most famous for proving that Newton was wrong about the calculus. He got the whole damn derivation of the infinitesimal wrong, which is another, just typical of the Irish desire to blow up anything English. Newton was being put forth as the greatest scientist of the time, so Berkeley found a mathematical error in Newton. And they've been arguing about it for the last 300 years, but majority opinion is that Berkeley won. And then he set forth to prove the universe doesn't exist, which undermines English imperialism at the root. Berkeley's proof is based on the idea that the universe doesn't exist, but God thinks that it does. He does not propose any solution to this dementia on the part of God. We're sort of stuck with it until God recovers, and then, like good Buddhists, presumably we can vanish into the void again. Another great Irish thinker was William Rowan Hamilton, generally considered the greatest mathematician Ireland ever produced. Now, from ancient times until Hamilton, it was believed that x times y equals y times x. I'm sure some of you encountered that at some point in your educational careers.
What was that again?
Back in the days when school children were expected to know something, all school, in those reactionary times, all school children knew that x times y equals y times x. Self-evident on the face of it, just like Partridge is arguing he's alive, he must be alive. That does not account for Irish logic. Rowan Hamilton said, "But God, I'll prove it's not true." And he invented a system of mathematics in which x times y does not equal y times x at all. And 100 years later, this turned out to be the natural system of mathematics for quantum physics. So don't underestimate the cleverness of the Irish and their resolute attempt to absolutely destroy English imperialism and wipe it off the face of the earth. You see, there are two types of Irish chiefly, the IRA who blow up English things literally, and the Irish philosophers and artists who blow up the English worldview. Finnegan devoted most of his attention to the word is. He said every time we use this accursed Sassenach verb, Sassenach is Irish Gaelic for English, Saxon. Every time we use this accursed Sassenach verb, we are perpetuating the empire. The empire never ended. Many of the Irish thought the British Empire had fallen apart and only held on to a little bit of Northern Ireland, but according to Timothy F.X. Finnegan, the empire exists within the structure of the English language. So anybody communicating in English is subliminally being programmed to accept the Queen of England as legitimately one of the 5 richest women in the world. Now, nobody knows who the other 4 richest women in the world are, but we all assume they did something for their money. Something or other. They got it one way or, they made some contribution at the lowest level. They married the right guy. That requires a bit of sexual intelligence and evolutionary know-how. The Queen of England is renowned for being rich for no reason at all except that she's the Queen. She is the Queen. You see, the verb lies in that little word. The problem lies in that little word is. Every time you say is, you are perpetuating monarchy, the English dominion over the planet, and if everybody started talking Gaelic, we'd be liberated completely. And for this, Timothy Finnegan is known as the great Irish philosopher of the 20th century, a scholar who, as de Selby said at his funeral, who was always wise, always gentlemanly, and occasionally sober, which is the highest praise you can speak of any... Irish facts are very, very malleable too. What I'm doing, you see, is I'm trying to get you into an Irish reality tunnel because San Francisco is pretty goddamn dreary. If you can escape to Ireland even for a few minutes listening to me doing my magic tricks, one of the best known Irish facts, everybody who's ever had a course on modern Irish literature or modern British literature, they slipped it into both, knows the story of how on Yeats's 40th birthday, James Joyce went to Yeats's hotel and went to his room, knocked on the door and said, "I hear you're 40 today." And Yeats said, "Yes." And Joyce said, "Too bad, you're too old to be influenced by me." Now that if you want to make a little real study of this, go down to the San Francisco Library and pull out the books on Joyce and Yeats and start looking through them and see how many books that story is in. Now that's a typical Irish fact. An Irish fact is something that fucks up the heads of people who are trying to find out what the real facts are. It's sort of like a rubber inch. It introduces relativity into our concept of ontology, which has always been the Celtic view. There should be some relativity in there. This Irish fact can be recognized as distinct from a British or American fact. Like Anthony Burgess has written that English and American English are both functional and rational languages, whereas Irish English is still a ludic language. Americans and English speak to each other mostly to talk about how to get the job done or how to buy the latest gimmick. Irish English is spoken just for the sheer delight of the sound of it or the poetry or the paradox of it. Like two Dubliners meet and one says, "Ah, Paddy, terrible weather for this time of year." And Paddy says, "Ah, sure, it's not this time of year at all." I said to a cab driver in Dublin, I was praising a lot of the architecture. I said, "But that building is pretty ugly." He said, "Ugly is no word for it. It's desperate entirely." It's literally true. The Irish have larger vocabularies than any other group in the English-speaking world. They pull words out like jewels from bags. When you have nothing else but poverty, you learn to treasure your words, I guess. Anyway, the Joyce Yates, You're Too Old to Be Influenced by Me, exposed itself to us as an Irish fact when we compare it with public facts, such as on Yates's 40th birthday, he wasn't at that hotel in Dublin, he was in London. Or on that day, James Joyce wasn't in Dublin either, he was teaching in the Berlitz Language School in Trieste in Italy. Or the fact that the origin of this story was Oliver St. John Gogarty, the greatest inventor of Irish facts in the 20th century. American scholars go over to Ireland with this naive idea they can do on-the-ground research and come back with great new insights into Yeats, Joyce, O'Casey, all of the Wilde, Shaw, all of the great Irish writers of the last 100 years, and Dubliners will tell them anything they think they'll believe. Because the function of an Irish fact is to fuck up the heads of people who think they can find out what a fact is. Nietzsche said there are no facts, only interpretations. The Dublin attitude is there are no facts, only what you can get away with. And you can get away with a great deal if you take this as a resolute motto. For instance, take Orson Welles' movie, F for Fake, which I tend to consider the greatest movie ever made. F for Fake is about Clifford Irving, who wrote a biography of Elmire, who had served a short term in France for art forgery. He told his whole, in the inside story of all of his exploits to Irving, who then wrote it up, revealing Elmire as the greatest art forger of all times. It turns out half of my impressionist paintings in museums are by Elmire. Most of the Van Goghs you have stood in awe before. Many of the Cézannes, a hell of a lot of the Modiglianis, these are all Elmires. And the reason most of them have not been removed from museums is that the experts who authenticated them don't want to admit that Elmire swindled them and insist that these things are real in spite of the fact that he's confessed to having done them. Elmire says very early in the film there cannot be art forgers without art experts. If there was nobody to say this is a valuable painting and this one isn't, people would have to think for themselves, and then there'd be no room for forgers at all. But as soon as art experts appear and say, I can identify this as a Cézanne and prove that a Cézanne is better than Pissarro, then the art forgers immediately appear and start producing more Cézannes. To digress a bit, without getting into Salvador Dali's map of Europe, which consists only of Spain and Dublin, a very interesting insight. Just before Salvador Dali's death, the French police seized a whole bunch of blank canvases with Dali's signature or a forgery on them. Due to a prolonged investigation, they became convinced that it was Dali's signature. Dali was selling blank canvases with his signature to forgers so the forgers didn't have to forge the signature, so the signature would be real and the forgeries would sell faster for more money. And you see, Dali, who once said, the only difference between me and a madman is that I am not mad. Dali had figured out that if you're successful, the forgers are going to start taking a cut of the profits. So he figured out how to take a cut of the profits of the forgers by selling them his signature on canvas. And then they just did the best Dali they could do, and I think this definitely shows the advantages of insanity, which has to be genetic. There's more and more evidence. Read Brain Mind Bulletin, any issue. The Dalis came to Spain in the 17th century. It was called the Flight of the Earls. When Red Hugh O'Neill pulled out of Ireland, a whole bunch of other families went with him, including the Dalys. And after 300 years in Spain, the name Daly had become Dali. which is why Salvador Dali's paintings only make sense if you're thinking in Gaelic when you look at them. And getting back to F for Fake, Orson Welles at the beginning of the movie tells you that even though this is about two notorious frauds, we're going to tell the truth in this movie, and we'll even repeat that in writing. And on writing, it comes on the screen, and Welles reads it aloud. For the next 1 hour, we will tell you nothing but the truth. At the end of the movie, which runs an hour and 17 minutes, you find out that Welles admits he's been lying for the last 17 minutes, and everything you've seen is fiction. It's a magic trick. And you come out and think, well, that was clever, but then when you go back and see the movie again, you realize Welles was lying about things all through the movie, and so were Irving, and so were Elmire. And then you start to wonder, was Elmire lying about the degree of his success as an art forger? Maybe the experts are telling the truth. Maybe he only forged a few paintings, a couple of hundred maybe only a few dozen. Or maybe half of the paintings we admire are Elmire's. And you start looking into the movie more closely, like every artist wants to. What artists want most is for people to pay attention and look really closely. So you look more closely to try to figure out when Elmire is lying, and you realize you're dealing with a professional liar. And then you get to Clifford Irving, who was supposed to have checked every fact in the Elmire story and found out it was true. Clifford Irving, while they were making the film, to add to the drama, or rather before they started the film, but inserted into the film by Welles as one of his little fakes, as if they just discovered it while they were making the film, Clifford Irving was denounced as a hoaxer because he had a contract to write the autobiography of Howard Hughes with Howard Hughes' signature on it. Irving denied that he was a liar, a hoaxer, or a swindler. There was a lot of debate about it. Experts were called in, and they authenticated the signature. Then somebody calling from Howard Hughes' headquarters in Las Vegas, claiming to be Howard Hughes, repudiated the whole thing, said it was a forgery, and he never met with Clifford Irving. And Irving was sued for several $1 million and threatened with all sorts of legal action, most of which never came to pass for reasons that passed the comprehension of anybody blinded by the English language and the British monarchy. But there's a point in the movie where Elmire says, you know, it is no crime to paint in another artist's style. It has never been defined as a crime anywhere in any country known to me. It becomes a crime when the signature is put on. And I never put the signatures on. I like to paint in other people's styles, and I wanted to sell them. I suspected some of the people I was selling to would put signatures on, but I didn't know it exactly. And Wells says, do you expect us to believe that? And then you get several shots of Elmire looking in various directions, and all through it there's a clock ticking. And about the 19th time you see the film, you realize Wells made up a montage of shots of Elmire at various times and put them together and put the clock in on the soundtrack to make you think this was all continuous. And it's not Elmire reacting to that question at all. It could be Elmire reacting to dozens of other things. So your attempts to read the truth into Elmire's reactions, looking up, looking down, scratching his head, rubbing his chin, all of this is entirely a delusion. At this point, the question is, these are the techniques that Wells pioneered in Citizen Kane, this kind of creative editing. And if it was art in Citizen Kane, is it still art here, or is it just a fake here? And then you realize F for Fake is a documentary about the impossibility of making a documentary. So therefore, it's the only honest documentary ever made. Because every other documentary implicitly says, I, the filmmaker, am God. I can find out the truth and reveal the truth to you. But nobody can do that. You've got to figure it out for yourself, and you're usually guessing wrong. That scene with the tick, 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 and Elmire looking in all sorts of directions, Wells' voice comes in, and he may have not been in that room at all. He may have just been in the studio in Paris where he was editing this film. This is in a room in Ibiza off the coast of Spain. God knows where Wells is. I've noticed very carefully that he's not in the shot, just his voice is, so you think he was there. Wells asks, who did the Howard Hughes signature? And then you get shots of Elmire and Clifford Irving looking in various directions. And you can read as much guilt into that as you want, or you can read Wells' trickery. After all, he started out as a stage magician, and when he wasn't doing too well at that, he walked into the Gate Theatre in Dublin, and like all things, became immediately a subject of Irish facts. According to the Standard legend, Wells persuaded Michael McLeod Moore and Hilton Edwards, who were running the Gate. They were both actors, producers, directors, worked in tandem combination. They were gay lovers. Interesting historical details, since sodomy is still a crime punishable by 20 years imprisonment at hard labor in Ireland. Everybody knew they were gay. Nobody turned them in. The Irish don't believe in enforcing their own laws, evidently. Wells walked in at the age of 16 and convinced them he was a big star on the American stage who wanted to learn Irish acting techniques, and got a leading role in their next performance. Now, that's the Standard version. Michael McLeod Moore, in a BBC interview, said that that wasn't true at all. He and Hilton Edwards looked at Wells and said, this is a remarkable young man who has the guts to think he can fool us. Maybe he can fool an audience. Let's give him a chance. According to Orson, in another later BBC interview, Michael McLeod Moore made that up. He wasn't even there when Hilton Edwards hired him. He was in London appearing in another play. So once again, Irish facts and ordinary facts do not seem to be able to coincide. The one thing is clear is that Wells got the star at the Gate Theatre at the age of 16 with no previous professional experience, and convinced everybody he was a professional actor. And as he says in F for Fake, and I've been an acting faker ever since. So which makes you wonder how many of his performances were real Orson Welles and how many of them were fake Orson Welles. Picasso once was asked by an art dealer, I've been offered these paintings that are all supposed to be by you, and I think some of them are forgeries. Would you look them over and separate out the forgeries? So Picasso started stacking them up. This is real, this is real, this is real, this is a forgery, this is real, this is real, this is a forgery, this is real, this is a forgery. And the dealer said, Pablo, wait, that last one, I was here the weekend you painted that. That's not a forgery. Picasso said, yes it is. I can fake a Picasso as well as any thief in Europe. And, you know, that's a very insidious story. I mean, like Finnegan's attack on the is of identity. If you can't say what anything is, if everything turns out to exist in a realm beyond the reach of our verbalizations, vocalizations, structures, grammatical conventions, and so on, if you can't say what anything is, you're thrown into a kind of Zen state. And when you think about Picasso long enough, saying that he can fake a Picasso as well as anybody else, you end up in the predicament I'm in, that when I write something now, I ask, is this a real Robert Anton Wilson? Or did I just fake a Robert Anton Wilson because I didn't have enough mental energy today to do the real thing? And I'm never quite sure. And the thing is, the critics aren't quite sure either, but they have more confidence in the is of identity, so they'll tell you whether it's a real Robert Anton Wilson or I just did a fake that day. But that is of identity is what upholds the British monarchy. And I want to say in conclusion that all of the claims by Professor Laputa of Madrid, that Professor Jesus Magdalena Laputa is the leading critic of Finnegan among European philosophers, and according to Professor Laputa, his infamous book tries to prove links between Professor Finnegan and the IRA. This is dirty British propaganda, even if it does come from a Spanish source. And now that I've made clear my total objectivity about political affairs, what I want to know is when Saddam Hussein was supposed to have violated UN resolutions, George Bush said we got to bomb the damn place right away. They never bombed Saddam Hussein. They bombed a lot of innocent bystanders. But the idea was, as far as I can grasp it, to establish that nobody can violate UN sanctions. Now, Israel took 450 people without trial and put them out in the middle of the desert to freeze, violating UN sanctions. Why the hell isn't the United States bombing Israel right now? I'll leave you with that Zen koan to work on.